Yeshakah. All right, friends, you may be seated. That was cool, right? We're like 1 hour, 10 minutes into the service, and it's time for the sermon. If I can find it. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So everyone, Shana Tova. Shana Tova. It is wonderful to see everyone here in our sanctuary, and also we've now got 53 screens on Zoom, the corresponding number of folks. It is a full house. So we're glad to have all of you with us this year, both here on Zoom and also in the sanctuary. Today, my talk with you is called We Begin Again. We Begin Again. And on its face, this idea is pretty simple. Every time that a year passes, we find ourselves back here in the sanctuary, back with our people, back with our same choir and their melodies, and even with our same prayer books, observing our new year together. This right here is the way that we begin the new year at Adat Re'im for this year, and then again next year, we will begin that same way also. We begin again, and then again, and then again. So it sounds simple, but we also know it's not so simple. I was very taken this spring with the Netflix TV series Russian Doll. Anyone seen Russian Doll? Couple hands, all right. Written by Jewish-American writer Natasha Lyonne. Anyone who's watched that show knows, because it's the whole premise of the first season, that you could be doing the same thing over and over again, but that it's not actually the same. Because each time that we come back around and begin again, we may find ourselves standing in the same places with the same people, holding the same prayer book, and reading the same biblical texts and prayers, but it is still different. It's my third time leading high holiday services at Adat Re'im, and every single one of those years has been so different. Just saying. We are also different. We've learned some new lesson, some new perspective that helps us see things differently and experience things differently as well. COVID, of course, accelerated that process in many ways, but it was already well underway even before COVID. We are truly different people now, having lived through all of what we have lived through. There's no way to deny that. So it is remarkable to me how many people that I talk to who still say things like, when we can have everything back just the way we used to in the before times. And I hear that a lot in different places at different times. Perhaps you're familiar with it too, and it's happened for you as well. And friends, I don't think we're ever going to be able to have everything back just the way that we used to. I think we'll recover a lot for sure, but we can't go around pretending that the last 2 years never happened. 2.5 years, actually. We have changed. And so the ways that we do things also necessarily has to change with us. And we see that exemplified today, for example, with everyone wearing masks. It allows us to have more people in the room who feel safer coming into our sanctuary because all of us here are masked, or in my case, also tested twice for COVID. We've all changed, and the ways that we do things has to change with us. So what happens when we realize this? When we realize that we have changed so much that we won't be able to get everything back. And I'll tell you, because we are already there now. We are going to find ourselves challenged. And some of us may be really challenged to let those things go. Friends, there will be grief as we realize and really take in how much we have lost through this pandemic. All the things that may never, will never come back. I think many of us are starting to come to those realizations this year. And there are necessarily, I think, a lot of feelings around that. Anger, sadness, frustration, maybe even despair. That certain things won't ever, can't ever unfold the way we always envisioned or dreamed that they would. I see this a lot. I see so many of these emotions knocking around in our society and in our country, our world today. I'm sure you have to feel it too. The tension, the anger, the short tempers, the despair. The increase of suicide rates, homicide rates, of crime rates all around us. It is clearly a collective process of grieving all that we have lost that is unfolding right now every day, little by little, day by day, as we slowly come to realize what's happened. Take a deep breath. It's really hard. It's really hard to talk about because we won't get the past back exactly as it was. We won't. It's sad and it's hard to dig in and to talk about this. Instead, we must look at where we are now. We must look at who we are now. We must take in all that has changed in the meantime, and then we begin again. How do we do this? How do we find a way to let go and begin again? And because it's also the high holidays, I will additionally ask, how do we do those things without taking all that anger and frustration and sadness and despair out on other people who are likely also all tumbling around in that same stew of feelings? Because there's a lot of that happening too, directing our anger and frustration out on others, and it's not helpful. How do we do it? Friends, I am here to tell you that we can get through this. Without killing ourselves or without killing each other, we can get through this. We can do it. We can begin again. And why do I say this? Why am I so certain because we, as a Jewish community, we know this deep inside of us, that grieving loss and starting over again, this is part of our intergenerational DNA. We are the experts at this. In fact, through millennia of persecution, marginalization, exile, and even genocide. We know this. And Judaism is full of tools for surviving, for processing grief, and then also for building resiliency and creating new things from the ashes of whatever has been lost. Some of our most deep and profound spiritual teachings come out of such times as we reinvent ourselves and begin again. And I want to put forward that we are living in such a time right now. In Jewish history, we see this over and over again. This is what we do. And here we are. Again, how? Knowing Judaism and Jewish history as I do, what is the main key ingredient to us moving forward now? It is one thing, and it's community. It is practicing the value of community. This includes the practice of recognizing ourselves as part of a whole that is greater than any one of us. It also means we must put aside some of the individualism that is so ingrained in our American and Western European culture. Saying, I want what I want when I want it, that is not going to get us through this very difficult transition. Friends, I'm going to repeat this because I think we all need to hear it. We are going to fail if we continue to rely so much on our individualism here. In our country, in our states, our school districts, also right here in our synagogue. We have to think of each other. We have to look out for each other, to think about the greater good. And yes, that also necessarily means letting go of some of the sense of entitlement that we all walk around with. No one likes to hear that, but I don't think we can sugarcoat this anymore. With all the violence in our society and the difficulties that we're facing, this is where we are. And it's kind of a rubber meets the road moment. And we either start showing up or we don't. And I'm here to tell you that we have to let go. We have to learn to think more about what everyone needs, and not just what we want, what we need. And the good news is, Judaism is full of examples of this across history, and the tool of community is it. There is no other way. The good news is that community and collaboration are things that we already say we value here at Adat Re'im. We don't always see it put into practice, and I think that that's something we can reflect on this coming year ahead, and especially over these holidays of time of reflection. Too often, I see us trying to reinstate everything exactly as it was, or to force through our own demands of how things must be. Even though you've got a new spiritual leader who is very different from her predecessor, has different opportunities and different gifts, different things to offer our community, things that we can all grow with and draw benefit from and enjoy well into the future. Too often I see us trying to force ourselves back into the old, even though we're all different now. We had the Shemitah year this past year, this year of allowing things to rest and then seeing where things stood at the end of the year. Perhaps you remember me talking about it last Rosh Hashanah, but even so, that year is over. Now is the right time to look around, to be honest with ourselves that some things are just going to need to change. And I am very grateful to be able to tell you that our synagogue leadership is very wise and is coming to understand this reality also. We've been doing a lot of work on that together. I see us really starting to work together more. To listen to more opposing opinions, to acknowledge that there may be different viable ways forward than the way any one of us thinks it should be, and that a different way forward may even be better, though we won't know it till we try it. And so, we are looking at rolling out some experiments this year at Adat Re'im. And I hope you will join us in supporting them. These experiments are being created through a model known as design thinking, which means, in sort of general terms, that we talk to people, we ask what they need, and we build things to meet those needs. And by needs, you already know now that I mean individual needs, but increasingly also thinking more about the communal ones too. Everyone with me so far? Yeah. So one example I'll share in detail here to give you an idea of what we're talking about is introducing some new approaches to Friday nights here at Adat Re'im. We are one of the last synagogues in Northern Virginia that still keeps its Friday night services at 8 p.m. There are a number of our Friday night regulars who have told me they really like 8 p.m. And I get that because they've built their entire Friday night routine around that time, and it's comfortable. However, having our service time at 8 p.m. excludes our children and our families and our elders who can't stay out so late. And I hear over and over from our members how much our congregation really values intergenerational Judaism. We want to include all our people, and there are some lost opportunities when we don't. So the experiment we're presenting before the board this week is to move our Friday night services earlier to 7 p.m. every week instead of 8 p.m. Let's see how this works, see what it does for us, see what Friday nights look like after a year of this experiment. And if you're able to join, we invite you to join. Another experiment we're going to be looking at is to consider some new formats for worship, including some other things besides Friday nights, either led by a 4-part classical choir, or the Shir Re'im folk group, or a lone cantorial soloist, whom I love because otherwise I'd just be up here alone. So we're going to be putting this before the board this week, a proposal to keep those formats that we already have, but then also to make room for something I am calling New Format Fridays, which would happen on the 3rd week of the month. The idea is that we're going to put this out to you, all of you, to ask what kinds of Friday night experiences would you like to attend? Make a proposal to the RPPC, our ritual committee. We'll evaluate those proposals. We'll discuss what serves the greatest good, and then we'll make some of them happen. If this proposal goes through, by the end of the year or beginning of next, on the 3rd Friday of the month, you will see us offering something new and different, something proposed by and also led by members of our congregation. I'll be there, of course, to help watch things, evaluate things, and make sure that we'll be successful. Because, after all, it is an experiment. After a year of new formats, every 3rd week of the month, we will definitely know a lot more about who we are as a congregation and what we need. And there's one more thing, one more idea I want to share. To really value community here, we need the intergenerational, but I have also been hearing you tell me that we need more people to gather in groups, specifically affinity groups. One of my commitments this year, my personal commitment, is to support our lay leadership in launching or reinvigorating the groups that we care about. Our Interfaith Families group, our Young People's Havara for people in their 20s and 30s, our teen program, services targeting our preschool families and our religious school families, our learning communities, including the one that attended weekly Torah study here in the before times, our sisterhood and our men's club, our social action folks, the Empty Nesters group, which now spans 2 generations of families whose children are grown. We'll be done in like 3 minutes. The children's services are going to start in just a minute. So now it may be the case that not all of these initiatives are going to be successful, in which case we'll need to think about our future as a congregation and find ways to adjust what we are doing to meet our current needs, maybe doing some things less or some things more, or perhaps, maybe even, to let some of these groups or initiatives go. Doing so will give us the time and resources to make room for the things that we do need, to meet the needs of our community as it stands today, to serve the people who we are here now, all of you and all of us. And I'm sure there is more there where that came from. Perhaps you were thinking of other ideas that haven't yet been mentioned. So friends, let's hear it from all of you. Come to us with your dreams, your needs, your great ideas. Come to me, come to our board members, because we want to hear from you. We want to know what you are experiencing and how our congregation can better serve us, all of us, into the future. We won't have the past back exactly as it was, but let's co-create something that meets who we need to be going forward. How we as a community can begin again to come through this pandemic and all the political strife that is out there with hope and excitement about the year ahead. I know we can do this together. And this is the year to do it. Shana Tova. Shana Tova. All right, friends. So just a quick public service announcement. The children's services are going to be beginning in the back classrooms. We've got 2 sets of children's services, 2nd grade through 6th grade, and then also preschool through 2nd grade. Just going to give everybody a moment to exit who is exiting.